BCT PCP here. Well, I'm going to talk about some things to look out for when you're purchasing a rifle scope. And the first thing I would say is, if at all possible, don't purchase one over the internet, at least not before trying out one actually in a shop. So if you go to a good gun store, they will, or they should let you take the scope out, or a demonstration model, or the one you want to buy, have a look out the front of the place, point it into dark areas, see how it looks. Dark areas appear in low light. How does your eye actually perceive the image in low light? Because any scope will perform very well in bright sunny conditions, but how well can you image something with your own vision, because everybody's vision is different, in low light? Okay, so the next most important thing to consider when purchasing a rifle scope is what's known as eye relief, and that is the distance that your eye can be from the outer element here of the scope, where everything will be in focus. Okay, so all scopes have a certain distance from this element to where there's an imaginary image plane as such, and that image plane, when your eye is at that image plane, everything will be in focus. If you bring your eye closer than that distance, things will start to become distorted. So there's this comfortable distance, if you like, and that's called the eye relief. If that distance, so you can have a short eye relief, or you can have a longer eye relief, depending on the kind of rifle or weapon that the scope is mounted to. And that's really important, because if you cannot get the eye relief right, maybe your position over the rifle will be incorrect and uncomfortable, or basically when you go to shoot your target, you will not be able to see the thing properly, because you'll image a black circle. It's really a distorted image, because you're not at the right focal plane as such to get the image in focus. Okay, so that's really important, eye relief. So the next most important thing that I consider is how easy is it to change the windage and elevation. So most scopes come with some kind of cap, protective cap over these controls, and this is to keep the weather out. And obviously, you could always undo these caps without gloves on, but how easy is it to do with gloves on? So you should, if you're a hunter that hunts in the winter, or planning to hunt in the winter, you should see how easy is it to remove the protective caps, and also how easy is it to change your elevation and windage with gloves on. I think that's really important. Right, another feature you might be interested in a scope is whether or not you can re-index the turret dial, and that is being able to remove the turret. So whatever you set your windage and elevation at, you can remove this, and you see there's a small white mark here. You can place this dial back with the 0 lined up with that 0 mark. There it is there. Okay, and that allows you, and I'll put the screw back, you can put the screw back in like this. Some of them you don't need any special tool, you can use a coin to do this. So I'm just going to screw that back down, and what that allows you to do is, if I have to change this in the field for some field corrections, I can quickly return it back to the known distance that the scope was set up for. So for example, in this case, I've got my scope set up for 50 meters. If I return it back to this position, I know it's going to be right for 50 meters, and I would do the same for this one here too. Of course, setting up your windage and elevation in this manner, it's not necessary whatsoever. This is just an extra feature of this particular scope. Okay, so it's not necessarily, if it doesn't worry you, then you don't have to, but it just does allow you to quickly come back to a known position. Now, obviously, another important thing is, it goes without saying, you've got to have some protective caps on there. And while we're talking about protection, I guess most modern scopes these days are protected for at least light rain to form on them. They usually boast about being filled with dry nitrogen gas or purged with nitrogen gas. That's basically so you don't get fogging up. So if you take this out of a warm vehicle and go into a cold environment, they will not fog up internally. None of the optics will fog up internally. That's something certainly to look for. I'd be wary if you took it from a warm environment to a cold environment and you started to see fogging in there, because it also means there's moisture inside of there, and if there's moisture there's a potential for fungus to grow on the lenses. Fungus is a killer. Anybody that knows anything about cameras will know that's a killer for lenses. It cannot be rectified. Okay, another feature which you may or may not be interested in, and that's whether the reticle, that is the actual thing with the crosshairs on it, if you want to call it for a better name, stays in focus throughout any magnification changes. So in this case, this is the second focal plane reticle, and that means no matter what you do by turning the magnification here, it will remain in focus. It may or may not be important to you, but that's something to bear in mind. Now, a really important aspect is if you happen to wear glasses, you must make sure that you can, and this is provided that I'm talking about, you can check out the scope in a shop. You must make sure that you can adjust your diopter correctly for your eyesight, and that's whether you wear glasses or you don't. You might even discover you need to wear glasses after doing this. So if you cannot adjust this correctly, you'll need to go and see whether you need spectacles, or the scope may not be for you. These things are not universal, so it's not like all scopes will be able to do this for your particular eyesight. That's not exactly correct. That's not the case, rather. How do you do this? Well, basically what you're doing is you're focusing on the reticle itself. Okay, so you need to adjust this diopter so the reticle is sharp. All the text which is accompanying the reticle, any etchings, everything in there is sharp. And if you can't do that, you'll never be able to see through the scope properly. So if you can't do that, maybe it's because you need spectacles too. So yeah, and you won't be able to check that out by buying one online. So if you can do it in a shop, it's better to check out a scope in a shop beforehand. Now, as I mentioned earlier, what's really important is how the scope actually performs in low light. All scopes will perform very well in very bright light. How well does it perform in low light? So, as I said at the beginning, you should take this scope that you intend to buy, look at areas of low light in shadows. You don't need to be in low light to do this. You could be out in the middle of the day, in the front of the shop, and you point this thing into some shadows across the street or something like that. See how well you can image objects there. That's really important. And yeah, because if you can't image something in low light, that means that the scope may not be suitable for hunting in a forested environment. Finally, I'd like to say be wary of offered magnifications on scopes. This one I knew because I did check it out in a shop, that the maximum magnification, it's pretty much unusable. The more money you pay for a scope, the better the maximum magnification should be. So whilst this one boasts a high maximum magnification, if I've got this thing cranked all the way up, you only have to have an extremely small movement of this eye here, the shooter's eye, and you will not be able to see out of the scope very well. So bear that in mind. So the final thing is that with scopes you can pay many times more the value of the actual weapon, because you're talking about optics here. It's just like cameras, you get what you pay for. So there you go. That's just a quick basic rundown on what I would look for in a rifle scope.